am standing here in Northeast Gettysburg. I'm at the corner of East Lincoln Avenue and Harrisburg Street. Down the road here would be the old Harrisburg Road, back toward the Gettysburg High School. In this direction would be the town square. And I want to talk about the battle for Northeast Gettysburg on July 1st, 1863. And a little bit of how the town has changed. In 1863, the Harrisburg Road, which is this road, did not come as it does today and then bend around here, around this corner, because there was no East Lincoln Avenue. In 1863, Harrisburg Road basically went straight through that house there. It's in front of us, number 107, and met with Stratton Street, which is today North Stratton Street. Back then it was just called Stratton Street. Now, in the area here where I'm standing, Hayes Brigade of Louisiana Infantry, starting in this direction over here, would be the 5th Louisiana, then the 6th Louisiana. Directly here where I'm standing would have been the 9th Louisiana, and then just a little bit to my left, the 7th, and then the 8th Louisiana. Under Hayes Brigade, headed in the direction where my camera is facing, toward Stratton Street, and a little bit to the left in this direction where Coon's Brickyard was. Further off down the road, off the Carlisle Road, was actually Heckman's Battery K, 1st Ohio Union Artillery, and then further here to my left, down the road, beyond the 8th Louisiana, was Avery's Brigade, and that consisted of some North Carolina infantry, starting with the 6th North Carolina, then the 21st North Carolina, and then to the left of them, the 57th North Carolina. I'm going to do this in several parts, but basically the advance was forward in the direction where my camera is facing, to the Carlisle Pike over here, to Stratton Street, which is directly in front of us, and then over here to our right, which is Coon's Brickyard. We'll continue this on part 2, but this has been part 1 of the battle for Northeastern Gettysburg. Here on the corner of East Broadway and 4th Street. Neither one of these streets existed in 1863. However, where I'm standing right now is the position on the left flank of the Confederate line on the attack of Northeastern Gettysburg, where Avery's Brigade of North Carolina troops were stationed, and where they led off their attack. To my left would have been the 6th, where I'm standing right now would have been the 21st, and to my right would have been the 57th North Carolina Infantry. And of course, over on East Cemetery Hill, Castor had his brigade of soldiers, the 73rd Pennsylvania, 27th Pennsylvania, 154th New York, the Hardtack Regiment, on the 134th New York, which were heading from East Cemetery Hill in the direction of Stratton Street toward a place called Coon's Brickyard. So basically the Union infantry and the Confederate infantry are about to collide in this area of Northeastern, this Battle of Northeastern Gettysburg began. While Castor was getting into position, Hayes and Avery's Confederates were advancing from the northeast down the Harrisburg Road and across the fields on both sides. Hayes' Louisiana Brigade was on the right, as I said, 5th, 6th, 9th, 7th, and 8th Regiments of Louisiana. Now that the Harrisburg Road split the line of the 9th Louisiana. Now Castor's brigade had gotten into position when Hayes and Avery's long line crested in the slope in the front, and they charged down on them. The Confederate attack was an intimidating sight. Well-maintained lines and battle flag lines stretched far beyond both flanks of Castor's 3 small regiments. And those 3 small regiments, as I said earlier, were the 154th New York, the 27th Pennsylvania on their left, and the 134th New York on their right-hand side. We'll continue this in part 3. of the battle for Northeastern Gettysburg on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. Okay, this is the third part on the battle for Northeastern Gettysburg on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. This is the merging point of the Union and Confederate attack here. The Confederates swept on, and they soon outflanked. The 134th New York was in a position over here on the Union right, and the 27th Pennsylvania was on the left, which is that small monument there. Of course, the 154th New York was in the center. That's the monument here behind the mural. Now, Heckman isolated 4 guns to fire 113 rounds of canister before they were overwhelmed. In the retreat of the battery, 2 of its cannon and 2 men were captured by the enemy, and 13 of the artillerymen were killed or wounded. The right and left flanks of Castor's line crumbled. In danger of being cut off and surrounded, on the right, the 134th New York over here, already badly bloodied by the enfilading enemy fire, broke across the lots toward the town and Cemetery Hill and beyond. On the rise at the left, the 27th Pennsylvania fled as a horde of Confederates rushed into the large gap between it and Heckman's battery. Castor's line collapsed for sure after the 154th New York, seeing the flight of the 134th across the rear, retreated the best they could. By that time, the Confederate Army had almost surrounded the brigade, and the majority of the 154th New York retreated towards Coon's Carriage Gateway, only to find Confederates there in force. Almost the entire regiment was captured. That few that got away were the best runners in the regiment, was a note done by a corporal from the 154th. Now, directly in front of us is something called the Castor Avenue Memorial. And it's a painting that was done by Mark Dunkelman, an artist out of Rhode Island, of the Battle of the Brickyard, or Coon's Brickyard. And it basically portrays the 154th New York Infantry, also known as the Hardtack Infantry, and the attack of the Confederates here at Coon's Brickyard, which was once Coon's Brickyard, rather, and it shows Stratton Street with some of the houses that were standing at that time. Now, Castor's brigade had time to fire 6 shots per man before Confederates could close with them, but they used the minutes well. Colonel Godwin of the 57th North Carolina noted that Union troops suddenly held their position until the Confederates climbed over the fence into their midst. A fight ensued that swarmed across the brickyard with sabers, bayonets, and clubbed muskets swinging. But the hand-to-hand fighting was brief. Soon, a good portion of Castor's men were captives, stripped of their rifles, and sitting on the ground under guard. Those who escaped capture at the brickyard were racing back to Cemetery Hill. And of course, one of those that was racing back to Cemetery Hill was Sergeant Amos Humstead of the 154th New York Infantry. And it was Humstead who fled back towards Stratton Street, and when he got to the intersection of Stratton Street and York Street, not far from where the later Eddie Plank garage was, he was killed. And his body lied there on the ground. And of course, he was the soldier that had the picture of his 3 children in his hand. And he was identified, and his widow and those children stayed here at what would later become the orphanage in town. And on the painting here, this is the image of Sergeant Amos Humstead of the 154th New York. Now, I did a video earlier on the Castor Avenue Memorial, and you want to go back and see that video I did. It explains a little bit more about the mural and about the battle here, but today I just wanted to concentrate on this battle, for us, this being the epicenter of the battle, the northeast section of Gettysburg. This has been the battle for Northeast Gettysburg, Part 3 at the Castor Avenue Memorial on Gettysburg Battlefield. Okay, we are standing here on the north side of the Lincoln train station here on the Carlisle Pike, or Carlisle Street rather. And we're standing in the position, and this is part 4 of the battle for Northeastern Gettysburg. We're standing in the position of the 73rd Pennsylvania Infantry. Now the 73rd Pennsylvania Infantry arrived in Gettysburg at 2 p.m. and were on East Cemetery Hill. As the 1st and 11th Corps collapsed and made their way back towards Cemetery Hill, the 73rd Pennsylvania was sent to cover the retreat. And they were right here on the north side of the railroad tracks in front of the railroad station. Now at the time, today where the Gettysburg Transit Center sits, sat 2 buildings. One was the Sheeds-Bueller building, which was built in 1858 by Robert Sheeds and Charles Bueller. It was a warehouse for coal, stove, and lumber business. It also was the original Masonic Hall. Today the Masonic Hall is on the Gettysburg Square. The other building was a local retail business warehouse for Robert McCurdy and Jeremiah Deal. And that building was built in 1862. During the battle, both of those buildings were used as a temporary shelter for wounded soldiers. They were used as temporary shelter as they awaited rail transport via the Hanover and Gettysburg Railroad Depot. This area was very important because it was here at the rail station, and it was a great place to transport troops out that were wounded. Of course, these 2 buildings stayed here, and even into the 20th century, around 1960, they were both demolished to make way for a gas station. And now, just recently, we have this new Gettysburg Transit Center that sits here, which is kind of neat. You know, it's a brick building. It kind of looks like it has an old look to it, but this is the site here on July 1st, 1863, of the 73rd Pennsylvania Volunteer covering the retreat of the 27th Pennsylvania, 154th New York, and 134th New York, coming from Coon's Brickyard, which is over here, toward East Cemetery Hill, down what was then Stratton Street and today is North Stratton Street. This has been part 4 of the battle for Northeastern Gettysburg on Gettysburg Battlefield. Okay, I am standing here at the Amos Humstead Monument, and right here in front of us is my licensed battlefield kitty. This is Creamsicle. I want everyone to meet Creamsicle. He's one that likes to go out in the battlefield with me and have a little bit of fun. Hey, Cream. And we're going to do part 5 of the battle for Northeastern Gettysburg, and we're going to end it here near the memorial for Amos Humstead, who fell near here mortally wounded. A local resident found the body and the picture of his 3 children, and that's how he was able to be identified, and he is buried in the National Cemetery. And I did do videos on both the Humstead death spot and this monument here, so you'll want to go back and see those 2. But I want to end this by saying the Battle of Northeastern Gettysburg was very important because it was here that the Confederate forces almost were able to go around the flank of the Union Army. And had they been able to get around that flank, they might have been able to attack the Union Army from the rear. Because they didn't, the Union Army was able to retreat back to the safety of East Cemetery Hill, and then build reinforcements to the east side on Wolf's Hill and protect it. So that action was never needed, and the Union Army was able to continue the fight on the 2nd and 3rd day here at Gettysburg. The 73rd Pennsylvania probably did save the day by covering the retreat of these soldiers. And as you've seen on part 4, they were stationed just west of us over here near the Lincoln train station. This has been a 5-part series on the battle for Northeastern Gettysburg on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook.